Okay, now we're recording to the cloud. All right, and I will start sharing again, just a moment. Okay, all right. This is our DNA genealogy class, and my name is Elaine Hayes. I work at the Laramie County Library in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and have worked for the library for over 20 years, about getting close to 21 years now. I've been doing my own genealogy for about 16 of those 20 years. I started doing it basically because they asked me if I wanted to be in charge of the genealogy department. And I said yes, and teach genealogy classes. Oh, here comes Shirley. Got another person to admit. Hi, Shirley. As soon as you come in, I'm going to mute you. And we'll go ahead and get started. So we want to know how to use your DNA test results that you got to enrich your family history. And I'm going to jump right into talking about DNA genealogy. I don't have time to review basic genealogy, but there are a lot of genealogy how-to books that you can check out in the library. And they're in the 929s in the Dewey Decimal System on the 3rd floor. And there are several books, 6 or 7 at least, specifically about DNA genealogy. And also there's numerous how-to videos and tutorials available out there to teach you about basic genealogy. And I have class handouts and my recorded genealogy basics and beyond the basics classes at lclsonline/services/genealogy. So if you go to our website, lclsonline.org, it's under the services tab, and then you go down to genealogy, and halfway down the page, you'll see those other classes. And I also wanted to mention that we still have free home access to Ancestry Library Edition until March 31st, 2021, because Ancestry realizes that libraries are closed and people aren't going out as much. And so you don't have to come into the library up until March 31st, 2021 to search Ancestry. Just go to our catalog and then our library catalog and then the databases, or a little bit more direct way is to go to gowild.net and then look for the Ancestry library and then enter your library card number and your PIN. If you have any trouble with that, call us at the library. And we will help you out with that. So we're just going to jump right into talking about DNA genealogy. These days, most of the DNA genealogy tests are autosomal tests, which means that they're looking at all 23 of your chromosomes. Some of the earlier tests were Y chromosome only test or mitochondrial DNA tests, but these days, they're mostly autosomal DNA genealogy tests, and they're looking at all your chromosomes, so all your ancestors. The Y chromosome tests only looked at your paternal lineage, so only men have Y chromosomes, so only men could take these tests, and they would look at their father's line. As far as the mitochondrial DNA test, that is your mother's line. And everybody has mitochondrial DNA and everybody gets it just from their mother. So that only covers those 2 lines out of many lines. But these days, they're all mostly autosomal tests. If you've done a genealogy test, DNA genealogy test, you know that you spit in a tube, or maybe you take a scraping of a cheek swab, and you just send that in to the company. You usually have to register a big long number, and you're sending it in anonymously. The company doesn't know who you are. They just know that this this spit in the little tube belongs to the person with this number. So to them, you're just a number. And you have to link that number up to your account or to your family tree or whatever to look at your results. Sometimes people are worried with the DNA test that they're worried about privacy, and you should definitely look at the disclaimers and any privacy information that the companies have. But the companies are trying to keep your test private as much as possible. And you usually have to opt into things like sharing with law enforcement or doing research and things like that. There are some federal laws that are working to protect your private DNA information, including this GINA, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, which basically keeps you from being discriminated because what might be in your DNA. HIPAA privacy rules, that anything individually identifiable health information is to keep kept private. And the ACA, or Obamacare, pre-existing condition clause. So if something has been identified in your DNA, they can't call that a pre-existing condition and not cover you for it. So there are some ways of protecting you, your DNA, private DNA information. Why would you want to use DNA in genealogy? Well, a lot of people just like looking at those ethnicity percentages or estimates. They can reveal the countries of origin of your ancestors. You can confirm that your family tree that you have reflects your actual ancestry. You can determine whether two people are related when one or both of those persons is adopted, and through your matches, which is really helpful for people who are adopted these days to find their birth parents. Breaking down those brick walls. Often you're getting information and matches for people that are matches to ancestors that lived 400 and 500 years ago. So they may be beyond your brick wall. So you match with your distant genetic cousins, and you can form kind of a family search team and help each other out with your ancestral lines. So all of those things are good reasons to help to do a DNA test and help each other out. The DNA test can't tell you your whole ancestry chart. They're not that magic. They can help prove a distant relationship, but not completely disprove it. And things like, am I related to a famous ancestor that's distantly related? There's a possibility anything that would prove that you're related to them has dropped out in one of the generations. But such as, you think you have a great-great-great-grandparent who was Native American. If you have no Native American DNA, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have any Native American ancestry. That's why that you may need to have some of your siblings tested too, and because it may show up in a sibling but not in you. It won't reveal exactly where your distant ancestors lived or what specific group or tribe that they belong to, because your DNA is compared to current residents of those countries, and people do move around. But remember that these percentage estimates are just estimates, and they change as they update their data. But they're getting closer to this all the time, to really telling you in detail where your ancestors came from. This is actually my Ancestry account, and I've done an Ancestry DNA. And this is just showing you all the different regions of the world that you can have ethnicity matches to. And you might notice there are 840 separate regions in Europe, 109 in Africa, 133 in America, 56 in Asia, etc. So they're getting better and better all the time, more and more of these all the time. And one of the reasons is that I know that you're going to get some matches to second cousins, third cousins, is whatever, is that you've got a lot of people that are your ancestors. You know, every generation back, your number of ancestors doubles. So before you know it, you know, in 10 generations, you have over 1,000 direct ancestors. The little box about the first 7 generations, these are the folks that you're going to have matches to people, common matches to these ancestors, for sure. You may have some that are farther than 7 generations back, but so for sure you're going to have some matches to great, 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 great grandparents. So who you have 64 of. So there may be some great, 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 great grandparents that since half your possible DNA drops out every year, every generation, as you know, parents marry and combine their DNA. Some of these grandparents you might not have matches to because you don't have any DNA from that particular grandparent. Great, great, great grandparent. They're still your great, great, great grandparent, but possibility that happens. And this is because of the randomness of DNA inheritance. And it also explains why your DNA estimate might be just different than your full sibling. So your brother and your sister have different DNA ethnicity percentages because they got a little bit different from each parent. So you have 50% from each parent, but you got a totally different 50% than your sister or your brother did. And it gets mixed up. The individual chromosomes are mixed up a little bit. And this is just showing a couple of chromosomes and the kind of how it gets mixed up. So you might get more from one great grandparent than you do from another one. And this is just another showing you a family. This is a family with 5 children, and mom and dad have all tested in all 5 kids, and they have different ethnicity. And they're similar, and you can see the same regions showing up, but they don't look exactly the same. And that's normal. Okay, this is back to my Ancestry DNA results page, and you'll see that I can look at my DNA story and my ethnicity estimates. I can look at all my matches, and I have over 1,000 fourth cousin or closer matches. Through lines, I can look at that and see how exactly I'm related to my matches. Also, they have Ancestry DNA traits and things like that we can look at. Okay, I clicked on my DNA story and it shows me that, oh, okay, I have a certain amount of DNA from England and Wales. It's actually over on the side here and I can't see it because I'm seeing you guys instead. Let's see. Okay, 62% from England, Wales, and Northwestern Europe, 12% from Ireland and Scotland, 10% from Sweden, 9% Germanic Europe, 4% Norway, and 3% France. And they're also telling me I have a genetic community the St. Lawrence River French settlers. So these are French Canadians, and that's what's over on the left side of the map. And that's because I have connected and family tree to my DNA. So they've looked and said, okay, you've got DNA matches that also have people that were French Canadians and that lived in this area. So, and we can kind of get more details about different areas by clicking on those different areas. And it's also telling me that there are more than 500 other regions that they tested for, but they didn't find any significant area. My family tree over there where it says Jones Hayes full family file, there's almost, well, 4,563 people in that family tree that's connected to my DNA. And this is just looking a little closer at the genetic communities, the French Canadians. And actually all those little dots represent a person in my family tree and where they lived. So you can see they kind of clustered together. It tells you a lot of historical information about things like immigration and early communities and things like that. There's a timeline in my DNA story, and I clicked on the 1700s, 1700 to 1750, and we have folks coming from France over to United States and Canada, and 76 over there in French Canada, 15 in New England. And there's some names of some of the people that are in my family tree and where they came from and where they lived. So there's a lot of interesting things about looking at your ethnicities. This is just another example of my family and how I am different from my two sisters, and somewhat similar, some of the same places. I can see one of my sisters doesn't have any from Norway or France, but she has the England, Wales, and Northwestern Europe, Ireland, and Scotland, and Sweden. That particular sister also has a different genetic community, the Pennsylvania settlers. So I can look at that too, because obviously we have the same ancestors. So I can find some information from her DNA and her matches too, that might be different than mine. Okay, here's all my DNA matches, and to protect their privacy, because I didn't ask them if I could share their information, I've covered up their names and I've covered up their faces. But you can see at the top there, my daughter. It says that her DNA test is managed by me, E. Hayes 116, because she let me have that. You know, she's in charge of her own DNA, so, but she can let me manage it if she wants to. Then we have my brother and two sisters. And it also says that our amount of shared DNA, in my daughter's case, 3,464 centimorgans, which is just a measurement of DNA across 64 different segments in our DNA. We have our family tree, which is that 4,327 people, and the little green leaf, which is the way Ancestry's hints, says Ancestry has found a common ancestor for us, which we should have a common ancestor. If you look below under close family, these are actually my nieces, and they have less DNA, which is part of the way that in common with me, how Ancestry figures out that it's not a brother or sister or a daughter, that this is actually my nieces. It's in the range of close family to first cousin. and they have different family trees. If you see over on the right, we see those dots, the pink dot and the yellow dot. Basically, I've assigned the different colors of dots to different family. And since, you know, these people are so close in my family, you know, we share the same parents. So both sides of my family are represented, both the pink and the yellow. But if you go on down the list to set first and second cousins, you'll see that the yellow is my mom's side of the family, and the pink dot is my dad's side of the family. And here we've got some first cousins. And some of them have different trees, like Susan, who's the third one down there, has a tree with 2,284 people in it, but they have we have a common ancestor. We share grandparents. So your first cousin is going to share a set of grandparents. A second cousin is going to share a set of great-grandparents, third cousin, great-great-grandparents, etc. My first cousin's child is my first cousin once removed, just in case you wonder how that works out. And I have a handout about relationships too. The one handout that I sent you was centimorgans, talked how you figure out by just knowing how much centimorgans you share with someone else, how they're probably related to you. But okay. And I've gone on down and I've assigned other people to other groups. The second person there is a new match, and I haven't actually figured out how we're related. But the other ones, I know the yellows, like I said, are my mom's side of the family. And the greens are French Canadians of some sort. And I have sort of a brown color of the one on top. BH, I don't know who that is because it's, you know, I don't have a picture and I don't have a full name, but there's things that you can see about that is that it's managed by somebody else. Somebody called G7 Chris manages that. And we're third to fourth cousins, which means that we share a great-great-grandparent or great-great-great-grandparent. But Ancestry has figured out who that common ancestor is that we share, and I can take a look at that. And it was probably pretty easy to figure out because we both have a family tree. But I'm going to click on that one and see more information about the relationship between me and BH. And it has their predicted relationship. I've added them to a particular group already because I figured out how we're related. But below we can see the family tree, and Ancestry put in green who are our common ancestors. So Jeremiah Becker and Mary Elizabeth Myers are both in our family trees. And I am descended from Emmanuel Becker, who was the brother to Louis Jerome Becker. So that's how and BH is descended from Louis Jerome Becker. So, and you can look at other people's family trees if they let you, if they're public. And this is actually not my family tree. This is unsourced IHDE/something that's managed by G7 Chris. And I looked into that family tree, and I can see Jeremiah Becker and Mary Elizabeth Myers tree. And if I don't know this information, I can add this to my family tree. And I can also communicate with G7 Chris. That's kind of what he's doing if he's managing it, is that if I want to talk to JH about our family tree, or BH about our family tree, I would have to go through G7 Chris. So I've actually talked to him before, but it's been 2 years ago. And when I looked at this the other day, I saw that he has not been on for between 3 to 11 months. So I'm a little worried about G7, Chris. I hope he's still around. But here's all the people that he manages, their DNA, family members, I'm sure. And he's got more than one family tree that he's managing. He's got some photos, all sorts of things. G7, Chris, is not a match to me, but somebody else in his family is. And this is our email, basically an inside Ancestry email that we talk to each other, and back in 2016. So when I was a new DNA test taker. And over on the left, you can see all the other people I've talked to. And, you know, I've asked them questions, or sometimes I'll ask, you know, how are we related? And I usually will share the names of my great-grandparents, just their birth surnames, and to see if any of those people, if they recognize any of those surnames. And people used to email me back, but not as much anymore. So unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that have done DNA tests that maybe aren't as interested in genealogy. All right, this is kind of a long story, but this kind of shows you what you can find out from talking to other people. I have a great-grandmother. Her name was Anna Teed, and I was told by that side of the family that their original name was Anderson. I found out from census records that Anna Anderson Teed was born in Sweden. And I didn't know much else about her, except she did marry Joseph Guyette, who was French Canadian. But I wanted to know more about her. I didn't know that much about her. And trying to look for Anna Anderson from Sweden, there's thousands of them. So it was really hard to find more information. But when I did a DNA test, I got one of these Ancestry emails from Monica Mattsson, who lived in Sweden. And she said, well, we're 5th to 8th cousins. I have family that's from the same place as your family's from. And I kind of told her what I knew about them. And I said that they took the name Teed from the TID, which is on their immigration papers. And I looked it up. In Swedish, it means time. So I thought maybe they they were watchmakers or something like that. And it's kind of embarrassing because I'm saying this to somebody who obviously knows how to speak Swedish, but that's what I knew. Monica got back to me and told me that her ancestor from Kirkefalla was named Katharina Hakensdotter, and that Teed could mean time, but it also might mean that river that goes through that village, which was like, oh, well, that makes total sense. You know, instead of just, it's the Anders Anderson who lived on the Teed, and that's where they got the name Teed. So I told her a little bit more about my family, and it was all really helpful. And then she came back with the connection. She gave me, I don't know, 4 or 5 generations of ancestors in Sweden. And at this point, I gave her my real email address because we had just been talking through Ancestry, so she could send me her family tree. So I knew about Anderson Teed over there on the left, and our common ancestor is Katharina Hakensdotter, and she gave me everything to the right of Katharina Hakensdotter, all those folks' names, which was wonderful. And since then, I've even found more. But this is what you can get, is I don't think I would ever have figured this out, just because all the records are in Swedish, and I don't live in Sweden, I don't speak Swedish. But Monica helped me out with that by just talking to her. Actually, this is Anders and Gustava Tied, which was actually found from FamilySearch.org, another genealogy website. Okay, and there was also have the ancestry through lines. These pictures all come from my family tree, but these are my great grandparents. And I just wanted to look at who do I have common ancestors with Catherine Selbeck. So I clicked on Catherine Selbeck, and there's me. Catherine Selbeck is my great grandmother. And of course we have August Haug is my grandfather, and then there's my mother, and then there's me. But August had multiple brothers and sisters, and I have DNA matches to the descendants of all of those other brothers and sisters too, including Rose Helen Haug. I opened that up, and where it says evaluate, these are people that are not in my family tree, but Ancestry thinks they probably should be, because they lead to Sarah, who's my second cousin once removed. So I can look at those, and I have hints to help me with my family tree. And I've added a lot of people that way. If I go a little bit farther down, I have my great grandparents. And some of these, the ones that are in green or have the little kind of dotted green outline, these are people that are not in my family tree. I don't have, my family tree ends before these people, but Ancestry thinks, based on my DNA, that these are possibly my grandparent, my fourth great grandparents. So I can look at that and evaluate it and see if I'd like to add these folks to my family tree, which is, I mean, I have 3 of them, and there are 5 more. Okay, and that's what you can see on Ancestry. I also did just recently, back in December, did a 23andMe test. And 23andMe is another one of the big companies that they are kind of specialized, or they started out doing health DNA. But I did a health and ancestry DNA test. And I'm still kind of exploring my results here, but there are 53 ancestry reports, and there are 60 some, I think, health reports. But I can look at any of those things and check out, you know, they have all sorts of health action plans and things like that that I haven't done yet. I can know about the 5 key genes linked to severe COVID-19 or whatever if I want to, by looking into, you know, applying my own DNA. This is my ancestry composition, and it's going to be different probably at every DNA site, DNA genealogy website, because they look at things a little differently. They're looking at different markers in your DNA. So I have 41.7% French and German, 29.7% British and Irish, 10.6% Scandinavian, which makes sense with the Swedish great grandparents. But and I can look at that, my DNA composition in detail, the DNA relatives list, and you know, they provide interesting little things like get to know your relatives. They are 70% more likely to think that fresh cilantro tastes like soap. which I don't think that. I love cilantro, but anyway, they're 70% more likely to think that. So you can see how much Neanderthal ancestry you have, maternal haplogroup and paternal haplogroup. I don't have a paternal haplogroup because I don't have a Y chromosome, but I can look at my maternal haplogroup results. So I looked at my ancestry, and this was kind of exciting when I first looked at it, because under French and German, they have 6 regions and they go pretty into detail. And I saw that Baden-Württemberg, Germany, and that's exactly where my mom's grandfather came from. That's exactly where he came from. It's Baden-Württemberg, Germany. For Scandinavia, it's all Sweden, and this first place is not where the Teeds came from, but the second one they list is. And so I thought that was pretty exciting that it was just right on. And this one gave me a little bit of a surprise. Down at the bottom under Western Asian and North African, there's Cypriot, which is the island of Cyprus, which I think is really interesting. So I'm trying to figure out my Cyprus connection. You can go in and look more detailed at your 41.7% of your ancestry is French and German, and it kind of shows you the darker the blue color is, the more likely that they came from that area of Germany. They also give you a timeline, and your ancestor who was Scandinavian or Cypriot, when did they come? How many generations ago was your most recent ancestor from that population? I feel like the first 3 are pretty right on. Not sure about the Cypriot or Spanish and Portuguese or Finnish, since I have not found any of those populations yet. They also give you a chromosome browser, which has all 23 of your chromosome pairs listed. And mine looks very blue because it's all European pretty much. And the Cypriot is the only purple little bit there. But you can find exactly where the different segments of DNA of different ethnicities are. For instance, if I hover over Scandinavian, it shows me, where are my segments of DNA that are Scandinavian. I think this is really interesting because chromosome number 8 looks like it's all Scandinavian, which is kind of strange. Maybe not as much mixing happened on that chromosome as I would think. And that also must be the one that's from my dad, because he had the Scandinavian ancestry. All right, here's my relatives. And I had 1,500 relatives on 23andMe. There was quite a bit more on Ancestry because I think it's a bigger database. But my first cousin, Mary, instead of centimorgan numbers, they gave me percentages. So we share about 16% of the DNA that, we have the same, about 16% of our DNA is exactly the same. My other first cousin, we have 13.9 and 8.67 and things like that of my other first cousins in 36 or 35 segments, things like that. And I was able to actually look through the first 10 of these people and figure out who they were. Which exactly cousin is this? But I clicked on Mary, and it'll show me how I'm related to Mary. We share grandparents. And Mary is in my family tree because I've put in my family tree. This is Mary's Okay, this is my family tree and Mary's. Mary's a little bit more European than I am. Our maternal haplogroup is the same, which should be correct, because she is descended from my mother's sister. So, you know, we both got our haplogroup from same person, same line. This 23andMe also gave me a family tree that they created by just looking at my DNA and saying, we think this is how you're related to people. And the names, except for my DNA matches, weren't there. You can see where my the people that are still living, I've kind of put blue boxes or pink boxes over them, so you can't see who they are. But down at the bottom, we have DNA relatives, and they say this is one side of your family on the right, which happens to be my mother's side of the family, and the other side of the family on your left, that's my dad's side of the family. So I was able to figure out who these people were mostly, and put in additional relatives' names that haven't taken DNA tests, because some of them are passed away already. But that was kind of cool. What else can you do with your DNA test information? You can download the raw DNA and put it in another website. Ancestry and FamilyTreeandMe don't let you do this. You have to test with them to get results. But other DNA companies like Myheritage, Living DNA, Family Tree DNA will let you take a DNA test from another company and download it into their company and get some information. They usually limit it to how much they'll give you, because they would like you to sign up with them also and pay them some money, but they'll give you some information. And this is what my raw DNA looks like. And this is all a certain location on chromosome number 1. And it's the location ID, chromosome 1, the position, the first allele, whether it's a G, T, C, or A, and what the second one is, because it's a double helix. So there's going to be two proteins on each location. Another place where you can put your information in that you've tested with another company is DNA Land, and it gives you an ancestry report. That this is a few years ago, but it looks different too. It's not as specific. There's a lot of Northwestern European, but it hasn't really broken it down into exactly what kind of European. These are my DNA matches at DNA Land, and one of them I left his last name because Guyette and Goyette are the same name. One thing you learn is that everybody changes their name and spelling doesn't count in genealogy. If it sounds the same, it's probably the same family, same name. And in this case, we have enough of the same DNA that we're definitely related. Although he's just a 4th cousin, so not too close. DNA Land gives you trait predictions and things like that. They exist, and it's free. They exist because they're doing some research with your DNA, but remember again that it's anonymous, and it's not, they're not sharing it with anyone else or whatever. But and you can answer some questions about your traits. It'll predict what you look like and things like that, and you can tell them whether it's correct or not. GEDmatch is another place that you can put in your results and get more matches, especially if you're looking for like birth parents or something like that. You really want put your DNA in as many pools as you can to get as many matches as you can. They may not have tested at 23andMe, but they've tested at Ancestry or vice versa. But if you put it in, but maybe they've also gone to GEDmatch. And watch your privacy in GEDmatch as anywhere else. You can do things like get different kinds of estimates, ethnicity estimates, and they look a little different, but sort of similar. They're just looking at it in a different way. So there's two different mixtures, two different results. Here's some of my matches to different people. And sometimes I'll see the same matches. This is interesting because GEDmatch has your actual email address there. They don't have a way to do private, anonymous emails, but so they actually show you your real email address if you want to talk to your matches, find out how you're related. You have to opt in to research and opt in to law enforcement matching, because they do have in GEDmatch, they do accept DNA from law enforcement places, so they could be looking for perpetrators of crimes or Jane Doe's or John Doe information and things like that. So I actually opted into that because, I just want to help out. This is my predicted eye color on GEDmatch, and it's kind of interesting because it's a lot more complicated than you think it is. It takes all these different areas that they're looking at to see what my eye color is, and it's not totally right. My eyes are more green than that, and there's things like it's looking at the different chromosomes and where the different ethnicities are found on your chromosome. It's sort of a different way of doing a chromosome browser that we saw earlier at 23andMe. Myheritage is another one that'll let you put in your DNA that was taken from another ancestry. In this case, I put my Ancestry DNA into Myheritage, and I could put my tree in there too and get matches. I think it says I have 4,461 record matches. Yeah, there were a lot of matches there. And they show me a map and say I have 92% North and West Europe, South Europe. This time they don't say Cypriot, but they say Greece, but there's 8%, which seems like a lot more than 1.3% that I had in the other one. Okay, so this is more Myheritage, just looking at, and I have some DNA matches down there. I didn't have quite as many at Myheritage. I just don't think it's as big as a company, but this was a few years back too. But then again, I keep seeing some of the same people. And I have matches from different places. Myheritage has a lot of people that are in Europe rather than in the United States, which is good to know if you're trying to find matches for people in Europe. And this is just comparing me to Mark, and first cousin twice removed to fourth cousin. I think he's, yeah. And I had to put a lot of boxes around this just to let you know, be careful what you're sharing with other people, because for Mark, I had his first name, his last name, his parents' full name, where he was born, his birth date, where he's living now, I can't remember, and his picture. So I had a lot to cover up there. So when I was looking at Mark's information. Myheritage sends you emails. A lot of them will send you notices. I think Myheritage has, or maybe it's Family Tree. It's Family Tree DNA that has their theory of family relatedness or something like that. But the smart matches from Myheritage, they'll tell me that I have a smart match. And here we have a smart match to somebody in the United Kingdom, somebody in Norway, and somebody in the USA. So we're getting some matches outside of the United States, which is interesting. This was my guy in Norway, and here's just another variation of the Guyette, Goyette, Gauger. It's all the same person, same family name, but it's just spelled differently. And it all has to do with how you pronounce it in English versus French. And so that was kind of interesting. One thing you can do to get a health report, see if you do Ancestry, you just get an Ancestry family heritage report, but you don't get a health report. But you can put your raw DNA into Prometheus.com and you can get a health report. This costs some money, but it's only $12 to $16, so it's not a lot of money. And it will be available for you to look at, download, whatever, for 45 days, and then it just disappears. So you don't have to worry that it's out there forever. It's just out there for enough time for you to print it. It's many, many pages, so you might not want to, but download it or whatever. And it gives you reports about, health risks and things like that based on your DNA. You can find out more about DNA genealogy at places like the FH Guide, which is the familyhistoryguide.com. Up at the top, you can search Family Search, Ancestry, Myheritage. I went to a DNA project and to learn more about the basics of genetics and DNA research. So there's a lot of different ways to learn more about DNA genealogy. I've mentioned most of these online resources, but here's the websites, and they're in the handout that I sent you in the email. So, but they're kind of listed here. And I probably going to open it up for questions now. But what have you learned from your DNA test experience? I'll unmute you so you can talk, or you can enter your question into the chat, or you can just email me later. And before I unmute you, I just want you to know that we're going to be doing virtual genealogy classes every Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the month. Not every Wednesday, every month, but the second Wednesday of the month at 3 o'clock. So look for that information, and I'll stop sharing and I'll try to unmute everybody. Some of you already are unmuted. Okay. If anybody has any questions, you can ask them now or just send me a question.
So which website did you find most useful for your DNA? Which I'm in several of them also. I have Ancestry and Family, Myheritage, 23andMe, all of them basically.
Yeah. It depends on what you're trying to do. That's why I mentioned if you're trying to find a birth family, for instance, I'd say put them everywhere you can. If you're really just interested in genealogy and kind of solving your brick walls in your genealogy, I'd probably start with Ancestry. because Ancestry has all the tools, you know, search tools or whatever. If you become a member, it's easier to, you know, they gave me so many hints, you know, that really specific for my ancestry. Family 23andMe is getting better about that, you know, but if you want to know about your health, 23andMe's kind of, they got the best reports. Ancestry has no information about your health, really. So depends on what you want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you had your test done, say, 3-4 years ago, is the test you have today? I mean, how the validity of the test you have today, are they better than today than what they would have been 4 years ago? Or is it about the same?
They do updates, you know, they keep your raw DNA information and they'll run it through their updates with their updated science and updated fancy math that they do. And, you know, if you'll get that you have new updates to your DNA. Your DNA didn't change, but the science and has probably gotten a little better. So no, you don't need to take another test. But they're keeping that information, and they'll keep doing updates, and it's getting better. So it's not the tests that are better, it's the science and the fancy math they do to figure out how you relate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I am a member of Ancestry, but as far as 23andMe goes, if I want to know what the updates are, do I notify them, or how does that go about?
They'll probably notify you by email, but you can just go in to your 23andMe account and see if there's anything new, because there's probably new matches, you know, new people that have tested, and there's probably new updates. It seems like they're coming every few months. You know, they come pretty often. They did at least 2 or 3 last year, updates at Ancestry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Jody Milborn. Do you have,
Jody?
hi, do you have the handouts at the library that you were talking about? And then also what days do you work so we can come up and pick them up?
Okay, they're on the 3rd floor at the library, at the Ask Here desk on the 3rd floor. And I have more handouts actually inside the special collection, which is where the genealogy collection is.
Okay.
So, but the 2 that I told you about are at the Ask Here desk too.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and if you're not able to come in the library, I can, you know, send me an email. And I've sent everyone, I think, at least one email. And send me an email back, and I just tell me your address and I'll mail it to you.
Thank you.
Don't forget, we have curbside pickup. So that's another possibility, is that you could say, you know, when you do curbside pickup, hey, can you ask the folks on the 3rd floor if they can put those genealogy handouts from the DNA class into my book, my curbside pickup order. It's a little out of the ordinary, but I think we can manage to do that.
Thank you.
This is Sharon. What can you do with the trees that are not connected on Ancestry?
The ones that are not connected, well, you can talk to the person, and if they actually answer you back, you could say, can I have access to your tree? Sometimes you can find their tree even though it's not connected. You know, you can find it it'll tell you the name of the tree, and you can just search for it. If they're keeping it private, that's when you're going to have to ask them if you can see it. Sometimes you can find out a lot by your shared matches, looking at your shared matches. So who matches you and them. And that's kind of how I figured out, you know, the little dots, how I should assign these people, is that obviously they're matching You know, my mom's side of the family, so obviously they're from that side of the family, and you know, not matching certain people, so I know how far back to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there are ways to get around that, to look in and find out some more. I wish people would respond more to your messaging than they do. A lot of people, and I think a lot of them just aren't interested in genealogy, and some, you know, other people maybe don't know who you are, so they won't answer. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, there are different ways that you might be able to figure out. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if you look in the shared matches, and the person you're matching with, you're looking at, doesn't have a tree, but there's some trees in your shared matches. You can kind of look at those trees if they're available to, you know,
Right.
because they're matching both you and that other person.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
Yeah. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, to tell you everything there is to know about DNA genealogy would take many, many classes.
So what's your next class going to be?
The next class is going to be African American genealogy. And I know we don't have a lot of African Americans in Cheyenne, but if you're interested in that, I haven't done that class for a while, so it's time to do it again. I think March, I'm trying to remember, I might be talking more about the census, the US federal census, and what you can find out from the census, which is really a lot. I have classes in Hispanic genealogy, Jewish genealogy. I'm trying to think of all the other ones that we have coming up. Military genealogy. So yeah, trying to do a different topic every month. And occasionally I will come back and update my basic classes too, you know, when I think they need updating, but they're available on the website, the genealogy basics and beyond the basics.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And if you have any more questions, remember ehayes@lclsonline.org.
Thank you.
Send me an email. Okay. Thanks. Thanks
Yeah.
for coming.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.